All right, so in this putting it all together video, we're going to talk about how we actually, or see how we actually would handle a mouse over event. All right, so here we have a simple HTML page, and it displays the text. It has been milliseconds since the epoch, and gives the user the instructions to mouse over to update. So if you see, if we mouse over the text, it changes whenever we mouse over the text. All right. If we don't mouse over it, it does nothing. We mouse over it, it updates. All right. So we want to see how in JavaScript to implement this mouse over effect. All right. So here's the HTML for this example. All right. Here we see our dot type, our HTML, our head. All right. Nothing special there. All right. So here's our body. All right. So what are we going to do in the body? Well, we need a paragraph tag to hold our output. All right, so you notice here that our entire, you don't see the text that we displayed. So our entire text is going to be generated in the JavaScript. All right, and now we're going to include two JavaScripts or two JS scripts here, utilities.js and epoch.js. All right, so let me show you what utilities is real quick. It's just a utility file to help with events, so I don't have to put all those if statements in there. All right, so basically what we're doing here is we're creating an object called u. All right, so we're using a variable, calling it u, and we're assigning an object to that. All right, so you should remember objects from core JavaScript. All right, so what do we have in this object? All right, so we're assigning to this symbol, which is, you'll see this more when we get to jQuery, but we're using a simple symbol to represent getting the element by ID. So we no longer have to say document.getElementID. We can say u.$, and it's going to be assigned this function that takes just the ID, and it in turn calls document.getElementID. Just allows us to shorten that syntax, which is something common that libraries do. And if you want to use this script, I'm going to include it for you. All right. Our u is also going to have a function called setText that takes the ID and the message. What's it going to do? It's going to grab that object by the ID, right? And it's going to, see, this is the call right here. So it grabs that object by ID, and then it takes that message and it assigns that message to the text content of that object, or the inner text of that object, depending on which is defined or not. So again, just simplifying the code that we would have to write for us. We have one for adding the event, all right? And that's going to encapsulate that difference between IE and W3C, and one for remove event. All right, so you'll see me use this script in some of the later scripts that we, or videos that we look at. All right, now let's go to our epoch.js and see how we actually create this mouse over event. All right, so we're going to start with our window.onload, which says when the window loads or the page is done loading, we need you to assign some functionality for us. All right, so when the window loads, we're assigning an anonymous function here. What are we going to do? We're going to create the event listener for the output tag. All right. So what am I using? I'm using u. So that is our. Remember, I'm creating. I'm using u, which is, let's go back to utilities. Remember, u is this object, right? That has these functions: $, set text, add event, and remove event. Okay. All right, so what am I doing? I'm saying u.addEvent because that's a method on u. All right, and then I'm grabbing the element by using that u.$, that I talked about. All right, passing it the ID. So the ID is output, so that's going to grab that paragraph tag with the ID output from the page. We're setting the mouse over event, and we're saying update duration. So every time they mouse over the output paragraph tag, then it's going to call the update duration function. All right, so vice versa, that could also look like this. So I could do document. So if I were doing it the traditional route, just so you can see it, get element ID. What's the element's name? Output. Which event am I listening for? On mouse over. All right, if you're using a cool tool like brackets like I am, you get that drop down to help show you those events. And what am I going to assign to it? I'm going to assign the update duration event to it. Method to it. So these two are equivalent. This just is a little shorter, or it gives me those benefits of not having those if statements and all that other stuff in there. All right. So again, when the page loads, we're adding the event for associating the output element. It's Mouseover event with update duration. Right? Why do we do that here on onload? Because we want to make sure that the output element is loaded completely before we try and add an event to it. All right. And before we exit this function, we're going to go ahead and call update duration now, so we get the original output on the page. All right. So let's take a look at update duration. What we do, we get the current date. Now we create our message. It has been plus, and then we say now.get time. So simple string concatenation to build the message. All right. And then we append milliseconds since the epoch and Mouseover to update. All right. Then we say u.setText, and so this is going to say set the text on the output element to that message. So basically, it's setting the inner content or the inner text of the output element to this message. Okay. So nothing terribly fancy there. All right, so that's how we get that Mouseover effect of updating that time. All right, take care and let me know if you have any questions.